Woo! Welcome, everyone. We are going to be sharing our takeaways from Sat Yoga's garden tour that we went on the 28th of March. So we took a lot of pictures. Oh, gosh. And we're going to start in, you want to start in the garden or the greenhouse? What you want to do? Garden? All right, we're going to start in the garden. So look at that. We were just talking about bananas. So we're going to share all these photos and just give a little quick rundown of what we saw while we were there. So this was one of the first things they talked about. They said every week, usually on Mondays, they go around and they will harvest whatever bananas are ready for their team. They had a lot of bananas, actually. If you've watched the other video where we saw the storage part of their kitchen, they had the bananas hanging up in a rack in there. So they have one designated person that goes around and collects all the bananas at one time. This was in their bodega, which means workshop. It's across the way from their greenhouse area. And this is what their harvest board is. So every day is broken down by, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then you've got a list of what the kitchen has requested. So this is an example of the communication between the kitchen and the garden, saying what they are asking you to harvest on what day. And I didn't watch this video, but we can see what he says.
Today's harvest.
Okay.
And yeah, I showed you guys the method for when you can see it done. I feel like that's a really important one, because if there's something, let's say, that's an excess in the kitchen and they want to gift it to the workers, how do we put it in the cart and take a picture? And so then we've seen it. Also, a couple of the workers have seen it, and so they know that when that comes down, they can share it amongst themselves. Like green beans yesterday, we had probably another 5 kilos of green beans that were more than what our kitchen needed, and so she was able to get them.
That's good vibes, yeah.
Yeah,
It's good vibes.
We grow a lot of lettuce because we want to always have lettuce, but it often means that we have an excess. So each week we're able to give some to the guys. It's not intentionally planted for gifting, but it's a nice result of always having what we need in the kitchen. So
yeah, having clear
we need to find some scales like this.
Deal with abundance, I think, really helps.
Hello. Which one do I? Just trying to put it back where it was. Sorry. Which one is it? If I want to turn the video up, the computer. Okay. Sorry. Thank you. So one of the main takeaways that he was talking about here was the importance of having your abundance channels set up ahead of time, because then you don't feel so overwhelmed when you're already ready to pass it on to somebody else. So their channel is a lot of their employees, and a lot of times they'll take stuff down to the feria when they have extra stuff that's just ready to be harvested out of their greenhouse that they don't have use for in their kitchen. So they're at a stage where they're producing more than they can use in some areas. He was speaking particularly about lettuce then. Their community has decided that lettuce is one of the things that they always want to make sure that they have enough of. And so they plant more than enough to make sure that that is true. And you'll notice the scales there. So they actually do weigh all of the things that come out of their garden so that they know how much they produce. So Dennis was talking earlier about how we're starting to record the number of seeds that were planted when the nursery plants something. And they actually record the number of seeds that got planted and then the number of seeds that actually germinated so that they know if they've got good seed or not. And then the other thing that they do is they will record the date that they plant it and also how much harvest they get out of that batch. So they know whether or not the seed is good seed to keep. This was a picture of their garden bed. They did not recommend this design. They had someone come in and put these beds in for them. So these are their raised beds and they're made out of metal and they've got trellis in there also. But they have, yeah, they just didn't recommend this because the cloth that was in there started to tear. And so then they had to end up replacing them. So slowly by slowly, they've been replacing these beds as they became obsolete. So thank you. This was an example of a carrot that they grew, which was really cool. Sol got to pick that carrot out of the bed. So they grow a lot of carrots there. This was a picture of their setup for their peppers. They actually put a little extension wing on their greenhouse in order to give themselves a little bit more covered area. And so this was a way for them to maximize their use of the greenhouse. They're using even more that's out there, but I really liked, if you can't, you may not be able to see them, but the strings are holding the peppers up to the bar that's running across the roof there. So that's how they're choosing to support the peppers along that bamboo thing that's running on the edge there. This is an example of their kale. So the main takeaway from this one, well, there's a couple, but you can see the spacing of the kale, and then behind that, the spacing of the cabbage, and then behind that, plants that can be closer together. But when they have bigger plants, they always make sure that they give them plenty of room to grow. And this was an example in comparison to their tall garden beds. These are direct in the ground garden beds. So they kind of like tilled it up, amended the soil and went down in the ground instead of coming up. Basically because they just found like it was so much work to try and make it raised beds that now they decided, you know, it's great. We have some that are raised beds for people that can't really bend over and, you know, hunch down a lot of time. But quite honestly, being directly in the ground worked a lot better. So this is the way that they're doing it from now on. And back there in the very back, you can actually see that they have the ones that they've constructed since that one that I showed you, they are on the ground. Yeah, in the ground now. So they actually have papaya trees growing inside of their greenhouse too. And apparently that has really helped them with, you know, the amount of water that they receive, but also it's helped with the bugs as well, those little gnats that have been getting them. So their papayas grow in their greenhouse. And they grow really well in their greenhouse, if you can see that.
Can you go
Yes.
back?
Yeah.
So this is what I envision Grace 2 greenhouse being,
Mhm.
where it's literally all, they're raised beds, but, and you can even put a border after this, but to start, you can literally just make mounds of organic matter and earth and then have pathways in between your mounds.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring attention to
Yes.
this. I love this. I want to see a lot more of this.
Mhm. And so this was a picture of their papayas, which I thought was really cool. This one right here, I think I have another picture coming up, but they literally had just cut it off and then it just V'd itself out. So there's one stalk down at the bottom and then it just looks like a Y. So it's got two trunks coming out of one trunk down at the bottom. And they did that because obviously it can only get so tall because there's the roof of the greenhouse. But it just started producing again. And so since then they've done that with all of theirs. So we could potentially do that with. There's a better picture. I will when I get to that. So again, they use a lot of these bamboos running across the top. Instead of trellises in the ground, they will tie the plants up with string. And then as they get a little bit taller, they'll just keep tying them up with string. This is a picture of their irrigation system, which I'm going to highly, highly recommend as well because they are able to water the roots instead of the leaves, and it just shows up a really big difference. And the amount of time it takes to water also, like you can literally turn on the system, come back later, turn it off. There's no manpower involved. And these little guys, those little red things right there, each of those you could decide, I only want to water the center, I only want to water the edge, I want to water one or the other, and you just turn them on and off based on how much water you need to give each bed. So there's a lot more control over what you're giving the bed. And that would be something that you record in the logbook too, you know, like this on Monday, I decided I'm going to turn off 2 of the lines. So I'm only watering half as much as I was before. This I took a picture of their kale because there's certain types of kale, and I would recommend us getting, you know, potentially looking into this because they're kind of like kale trees. They look like Dr. Seuss trees, and so you can just see the scarring on the stem. That's where all the different leaves have come off as it grows, but the stem just gets bigger and bigger and stronger and stronger. And so these kale plants are, you know, they're actually like 2 feet high, and they just get much, much bigger leaves. But it starts with them having enough space as babies. These are 25 centimeters apart, and they do it in a staggered pattern like this so that everybody has enough air, everybody has enough breathing space that they don't get moldy or anything like that. And this was, I believe these are beets, but they were also growing Swiss chard back in the back. Those are the ones that have the really cool yellow and red stems. And then over there, there was, I think those are sweet potatoes in the back. This was their lettuce, and they've got some asparagus growing there back in the back. And again, this was a bed that they had turned over. One thing that they recommended was being really careful with these tubes to either have a big thing like this that you can like roll them gently up as you're going down the thing, and or like completely move them and keep them totally flat because they can get damaged kind of easily. So just being mindful whenever you are turning over a bed to not mess up the drainage lines. And again, this is an example of allowing enough space for the lettuce to grow. And their cabbage was able to get really big too. They had harvested a couple of cabbages right there, and I mean, the thing was literally this big around. So this big. You see my feet right there in the picture. It was huge. Mm-hmm. So there they are right there on the left. Little baby lettuces, and then you can see the they do have netting. That's why I was saying that the papaya in there, they have less chance for the bugs to get them because it actually is it's mesh around the edge. And then this thing right here, the jug hanging in the back, it had a solution in it that it was mainly water, but it also had a pheromone that would attract, I forget what kind of bug, but they were saying it's really important to have that because the bug comes in and it falls down in the water and then it doesn't end up on your plants. So those are the kale trees I was talking about, 2.5, 3 feet tall there. But look how dark green their leaves are, really amazing. So here's a better picture showing what I was saying about the papaya tree. So right there in the middle, it was one growing up, but then when they cut it, 2 more came off the side. So it's like a Y, like YMCA. So there are like 2 branches coming off the top. And that one and the one in the back, you can see that.
I'm curious if they fruit more when they're actually like stressed more. So like if we were to go and like literally cut ours and then like when they re-sprout out, they produce more fruit than just in their initial growth. It,
Trees, so it regrows a new tree is what you're saying. Like it's like a banana almost tree.
They said
Like-
you can only do this one time, but
Yeah.
when it's one, you know, you can chuck.
so
It's not, this is an actual tree. Banana is a grass, so it is different, but I used to live in Hawaii and this is just what papaya trees looked like there. They would just have literally
yeah.
30 of them in one tree.
Yeah, and I think it might be partially like the area we're in. Like
Could
the temperature attracts different types of bugs and it might be more suitable for bugs here. Because when we were spraying them, we were actually getting papayas. Now that we haven't I feel like the bugs are killing the fruit when it first flowers. So we're not able to grow as many. And this is a very controlled environment in here. And I think that's part of the reason too. And probably because the soil is really nutritious, I would imagine. So I
And they
think-
also, yes, definitely, they spend a lot of time with their soil, and we have pictures of that too. But their theory with papayas is it's better to have 10 trees and treat them really well than try a whole bunch of trees and get none papayas. So they
Exactly.
literally like baby these, and they're just like, so, and I mean, look, off of one tree, they're getting 30 papaya right there. So it's their theory is being proven right there.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like the cutting the tree idea too. That's interesting.
The other reason why they're doing so well there is the environment up there is much cooler and wetter. So they've created an environment where they trap the warmth and the humidity so that it's like they created their own little miniature rainforest right there. And and like you said, Cole, it's a more controlled environment, but they've been able to create the perfect sort of environment for those particular plants to be really prolific and happy. Look how happy they are. They're so alive.
Mhm. Mhm. Yep, they're just growing in the thing.
What's the altitude at this place?
I think it's
1,000
probably
feet.
a little higher. It felt colder there to me. So this was the cart. We saw this before in the kitchen one, but it's really important for the garden as well. This is how the garden and the kitchen bridges each other. So every day they have a harvester that goes out, and by 7:30 a.m. this cart is arriving to the kitchen. The stuff that is not ready to be in the kitchen, like ready to go, goes to their processing area, and then the greens for the salads and stuff like that, or small herbs that they might be using for cooking go straight into the kitchen. So there's that communication factor. This is an example of their outdoor beds. So we were in one of the greenhouses before, and now this is just showing, they have a record for what bed is which one and what is planted and when they planted it. So bed 58 has something in it, bed 59 has something in it, bed 60 has something in it. But another thing to notice in this picture is it's got a downward slope to it. And they were just really stressing the fact that you don't want to have exposed dirt, because in Costa Rica with the rains, it just, it will wash away your dirt really, really fast. And so each of these beds kind of acts as a buffer for the one above it. So if it does rain, it gets pushed into the next one. And if that one, it gets pushed into the next one. And this drainage ditch down here along the bottom, they have a collection thing at the bottom. So they will actually, eventually shovel that dirt back up to the top and, replenish that bed up there as well. Did you have something?
Yeah, I do. I just wanted to point out too that to the right of the picture, you're kind of looking uphill. So as the water is coming down, they're also reducing the flow of it and collecting it. So it's kind of similar to what Wade was doing at his farm. And also that's some kind of root right there, Yampe or something. That
Pretty sure
59.
that's Nyampe. And this one, in 60, they were also saying cover crops. So that was the Japanese barley and the Indian lettuce. That's what they use as cover crops there, because they just never want to have exposed soil. So if it gets to be too much in the rainy season, they will plant something that they're not necessarily going to eat, but that's going to be regenerative for the soil, just to make sure that there's something planted there, because microbes love having roots and it keeps the soil alive as well. So that's one of the things that get planted. And they have corn growing there, which was so cool. We got to have tortillas made out of their homegrown corn. And this was the one or the other, I don't remember. It's either the lettuce or the I think this is the lettuce.
This is the lettuce.
Yeah, so this is the lettuce. So that's why I'm saying
Japanese
it's-
lettuce or whatever? or what is it?
No, Indian lettuce.
Indian
and
lettuce.
Japanese.
Don't they put the
barley.
Indian lettuce in their salad too?
Yes.
That's what he was saying.
So this was a cover crop, but apparently it can be food too. But again, you wanna space them out enough.
It's perennial. It's perennial, right?
Yeah, he said you can literally like you can just put a leaf into the ground and it propagates like that too. So yeah, I'm really excited about this plant.
So that was their beds, and their drainage ditch that I was mentioning. This is their little malongas. We might have some of these now, actually. This was a trellis for their chayote. And it was really productive, actually. They said they got like, I forget how much, but it was a lot off of this one little trellis that they had.
That looks like the one we built. Right?
It was made out of bamboo, not very high, and just kind of able to get in a lot of sun.
Yeah, the problem where we did it was not a lot of sun, right? That's why it was.
Yeah, they do like a lot of sun.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm like looking at this and like I'm excited about Grace too because of how open it is and how much sun it's gonna get. Because Wade even had his outdoor beds like in an open field basically, and they're doing great. And it looked like similar to this where they're like getting all this organic matter and like putting it at the base of the plant for it to feed, and looks like it's
break down,
Yeah.
decompose. This was a cool thing. I'm gonna ask them more about who I need to call to potentially get one of these installed, but that little box right there is actually like a weather monitoring satellite thing. So it tells them literally how much rain they get in this location all the time. And it's not them having to record it either. The government just takes care of it. And so they just get a record of, I don't know, was it a really rainy season or was it not a really rainy season that year? Because people's memories are not that good. They'll say, oh my God, last year was the wettest season ever. And it really wasn't at all. So you could, but it's literally, I used to live in San Salvador up the hill and I would call my neighbor that was like, I don't know, less than half a mile away. It'd be pouring rain at my house and the sun was out at her house. So it's very, very location specific. Yeah. Humidity, sunlight, I can't remember all of the different things, but it sounded really cool. All right, so that was pictures from the garden. We'll go to the greenhouse. This was examples of I took a lot of pictures of their beds, their tables, I guess I should call them. So they also have garden beds in the ground, but then they have a lot of tables to use as their nursery and seating stations and stuff like that. And when things are in pots, so there's rosemary and some thyme. I can't hear you.
Is that a garden bed beneath the table bed? or-
Uh-huh. Yep,
Alright.
they were growing green onions down there. So this is not a full table, like it's not like an impermeable table. Some of them are, some of them do have solid metal, but some of them are just grates. So if you water the plants above it, you're watering the plants below it. So it would some, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Mhm. So this is their soil table right here. I think there's a video of that. But this is their sifter that they use to get out any big particles or chunks that are left in it. Behind him is one of the tables that's solid. It is metal. It doesn't have anything that can go through it, the water wise. And this is their method for seeding. So they do, I think they said like 30 lettuces a week or something like that. They do everything in progression. So they know that they need something ready for the kitchen in 12 weeks. Well, they work backwards from that and they will plant 30 something lettuces every week because they know they're going to be harvesting 30 something lettuces every, 12 weeks in the future, 11 weeks in the future, blah, blah, blah. So
It looks like those are all just like small, sprout things, like containers, like, are they not using seeding trays at all?
They do for extras. They said that they always plant a few extras just in case they don't have a very good germination rate for these, but they've tested this seed so much that they know pretty much what they plant is going to sprout, and so they will just put it directly in the pot that it needs to be in, rather than waste the time to go from a little thing to bigger thing to big, the fewer times you got to move something, the less work it is.
Oh, so these
and-
are direct seeded. Like this is their permanent home?
No, I'll show you a picture in a minute. This
All
is,
right.
And it was only lettuce, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken.
these are just their lettuces right here. Some things, I mean, you'll see other things. So you're just looking at them in progression right now. So like you can see, there's just a teeny tiny little sprout out of that one because that was what they did a week ago. And then this one is 2 weeks old. And then this one is 3 weeks old. So they're doing little and little by little. They do the seeding trays right there. You can see, I don't know what that is. Looks like onions to me, but they are using seeding trays for some things. Yeah. This is a soil mixing table. That's why it's got the rounded edges like that, because they will make mixes there. So they want to have it kind of like a bowl. That was underneath one of the tables. So there's if nothing's on top of it, the sunlight's going to come through because it's a pretty big mesh. I can't remember what those are, but they've started a lot of their things in bigger pots.
These tables here, this is what I envision being in our greenhouse here in Grace One, above every single bed. I'm just putting that out there.
So this was example of their spacing. These were little parsley plants, and they do it where it's 3 in one row, outside in one, and then they do it in between them, and then they do it 3 again. So they do it in the window is what they call it. So it's staggering the plants as you plant them. And then once the lettuce is big enough, it's, too big for its little pot, it goes into one of their garden beds. Had really nice onions growing. Mezcla fuerte, I'm finding out what that is. They had 4 different kinds of dirt that they used there. And yeah, strong mix is what it means. And they mark all of their beds in here as well. Yes, but you'll notice they're only like this deep. These are tiny little ones, but yes, these are raised. If you're growing things that don't need deep roots, there's no reason to have a bunch of soil there. And yeah, less soil, less water. They had a lot of tomatoes growing. I don't know what those are, but they had really good luck with some really beautiful tomatoes. Those are cucumbers back there. Cucumber vines. Cucumbers, yeah. So there's their little cucumber flowers, all those yellow flowers. So they had a trellis growing up here instead of using the strings, that we saw before. This one uses the trellis. Just showing the trellis. Those are cucumbers also. So these are the older cucumbers. So again, just showing you progression. They planted cucumbers because they knew I needed to have cucumbers for the next 2 weeks, but they don't plant them all at the same time. So these plants back here are younger because they're going to replace these. Yep. And then once they get harvested, they replant again. So there's some red lettuce, some butter lettuce, little kale trees. I'm not sure. I don't remember what those little guys are. But then again, they have every bed. This was a really cool picture. because it just shows the progression planting from like literally they put the seed in here. So this one is the direct seed, Neil, where they had space in their garden bed and rather than start it in a pot or whatever, they just literally put it straight in the thing. But again, they've done so much experimentation and record keeping that they know this type of seed I can do this with. And so this one's just, I love it because right here you can't even see a sprout. Then these were planted 1 week earlier. They're a little tiny baby. Then that one behind it is a 1 week older, and that one's 1 week older. And this is the same thing next to it over here. These are all celery plants. So the bed next to it, this is 6 weeks worth of celery being planted here. And then that's week 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And that back there is week number 12, ready to harvest. So every week they know that they're going to be getting 20 bunches of celery that's going to be ready to come to the kitchen. And then when that week number 12 gets harvested back there in the back, that's when they start over and they put the seeds in that space. They do whatever they need to do to amend the soil if it needs it, and they'll replant it. Yeah, this was just showing the different variations between their beds again. So some are down touching the ground and, are 2 feet deep. Some are up, lifted up higher and only need 6 inches of soil. It just saves, it gives you storage area underneath. They stored a lot of bags of soil underneath here. And it also saves your back from having to bend down when you're weeding. That was an example of their trellis for their cucumbers. Really simple cucumbers. And their spider friends. There was probably 1,000 spiders living in that greenhouse. All those little specks are spiders. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's like an archway underneath all of the different things that you can walk in that is in spider web. But it's actually really tall in there. The ceiling is really high up, and that helps keep it a lot cooler in there. I noticed that it wasn't, I mean, it was still warm, but not as warm as it could have been because the heat rises up really far. They have 3 or 4. Yeah. This one is mainly focused on their starting, so this is more their, what would be called their nursery probably in our term. And then they move them over to the different greenhouses. Mm-hmm. Because when they're babies, they need a lot more attention and a lot more like paying attention to and checking on the water. Yeah. So these were, this is their communication board for their employees. A lot of their planting is done by employees, and they will put on here how many plants to plant, and they'll put where. So they've all got these little parentheses beside them, and that's how you know where to go plant them, what bed to put them in, and how many plants to do it. So plantas para sembrar, plants to plant, and semanamente is weekly. And then this one says every 6 weeks, and then this one says monthly. So every month they're planting green beans, every month they're planting scallions, every 6 weeks they're planting bok choy, and then every single week, these are the list of things that the kitchen has decided that they want their greenhouse to produce, and they plant those plants every single week from seed. So this was a back out view of their greenhouse. They said that they have 660 square meters of greenhouse space, planting space. So I don't know what that translates into when you include their walking space also. But they know that number so that they can decide as a team how much square footage of the garden they're dedicating to what plant. And again, that is a garden team influenced community decision. So they will speak to the community, but the garden team will also say, that's great that you want that, guys, and this doesn't grow here. And so just helping to make the decisions wisely, and also, helping the kitchen to understand that if you're going to request, a plant that grows really, really, really big to get one thing, like for example, broccoli grows really, really, really big to get one head of broccoli. And if you want to have 30 heads of broccoli, well, they're like, guys, that's going to take up 1/8 of our greenhouse? Do we really want that much broccoli? Or can that be something that we have special every now and then? So that, the amount of space that the plants take up definitely factors into what they choose to plant in there as well. This was the mesh that is on that first greenhouse that we looked at before. So this is a different greenhouse than the one that we were just at. These down here, they don't really have mesh on them. They were closed somehow, but I don't remember how. Because there was definitely a door to get in that one. There was a door to get in all of the greenhouses, so they're all closed in some way. So yes, they do use seating trays. Lots of space for mixing, playing in the dirt. If I didn't include these pictures, I will, but this right here, this little chart, I have them in the kitchen folder, but that was the communication bridge between the kitchen and the garden team to say, like, the kitchen is requesting this much be harvested Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and this is what the garden brought into the kitchen. So they have the request, but then also that the request got filled. And all the beds are numbered inside the greenhouse also. This was an example of their soil, and they were just describing to us. I still need clarity on it, but how often they turn over the soil and how often they amend it. When they do, they generally bring it out on this big thingy here, and we'll add new like bokashi, or I'm pretty sure that's what the mezcla fuerte was for, that they would add that into it. And if you're going to do, they didn't really speak too much about fertilizer, at least I don't remember that, but probably use what? Yeah, I wrote down a couple of them, Cal and Revital, but I don't know much about either of those. This one you saw already, what to harvest. So the other board was communication for what to plant. This board was communication what to harvest. And this is Salud del Suelo, that means soil health. So MM Solids, this was their board for their employees, where they're keeping track of when they do something with the bokashi and how many bags and all that kind of stuff. So communication key. This is an idea for a sink that I really liked and thought was super easy. It's just one of those blue barrels cut open, and you have a nice, deep, big sink to wash your plants in if you wanted, or to soak things. And then they have these trays and these tables that are the correct height to be able to stack these things. And Cole said they would be good for aquaponic beds. So they have two of them side by side and just a really easy thing in the middle to be like a table. This garden bed with the irrigation system, highly recommended, because healthy plants get watered at the root. Too much water on their leaves can, yeah, just make them not very happy. That was a different kind of papaya growing in there. And again, they planted those in their raised beds, so those are growing inside their raised beds. Mm-hmm. When they're done producing, they will cut them down. Oh. Uh-huh. Something happened. So this was another design that they went through that they did not recommend. They were doing something with the raised with the rocks, and they were just, this was one of the progressions. You can see how like degraded it's getting, the fabric and that kind of stuff right there. So they're like, that's gonna have to come out soon, and they're like, if we had to do it all over again, we wouldn't have made them raised in the first place. There was their tomatoes with their strings up at the top. Lots of airflow, lots of sunlight. This is, was just to show the spacing of the plants. They know that these plants actually get really big, so they are spacing them really far apart. So some plants can do 3, then 1, and then some plants can only do 2, then 1. Just depends on the plant. And this was showing the progression too of baby plants and then plants that are 2 weeks older. They had big squash growing. That was the carrot bed, which was really cool. This is a melon vine. We had this here once, cohombro. The big, long, red, tastes kind of like cantaloupe. Yep, these are melons, fruits. Melon. I was really surprised how many were growing on this thing. But this is their template stick right here. The half line is 25 centimeters and the full length of this bamboo stick sitting right there is 50 centimeters. So this is how they know how far to place their plants. So there's no guessing. They just have several of these sitting in the greenhouse, and you can just use one when you're going to plant. So that half line there was 25 centimeters and the full thing was 50. And that was him showing the example of sometimes you can do 2 and 3 and 2, but sometimes they need to be 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. So it seems like when you're planting, like, oh my gosh, all this wasted space, but at the end of the day, it's much better for them to have enough room to breathe. Yep, that's how far apart they plant them. I don't know what this plant is. I can't recognize it. Too little right now. And that's their butter lettuce. And this, they actually did have actual cantaloupe growing too. And rather than let the cantaloupes grow down on the ground, they had them going up a string as well. So they were able to have lots of plants in the same bed because normally you need a lot of space to grow melons because they're on the ground, but these, they were going vertical instead. So it's really cool example of vertical gardening. This was their, what this, he was saying they have 4 different categories. I can't remember exactly what they are, but one was the short cycle, which means seed to harvest in less than 6 months. One of their main considerations for what they're going to plant in their greenhouse is also the lifespan of the plant. So if it's going to be longer than 6 months, that's really debatable, you know, because the garden bed is premium space, and so they'll take that into consideration as well, how long it's going to take for them to grow. I think this is only a minute. We can watch this. Yeah.
We'll talk more about what he does, but he has a lot of his time here in the short cycle department. And then we have the beautification of the gardening. And we don't do as much of that anymore. That was at the beginning, and when we first moved here, there was a lot to beautify. And we've done our job. We've converted a lot of that energy and space now into growing food.
To the food.
But we haven't, as you can see, we haven't let go of the beautification part, and that's still very important for us. And we actually have a term sundaram, which is that beauty, basically, that supreme and beauty that is recognized in nature, in the plants. And so that inspires us. It's you know, not everything has to be edible, right? It has beautification also has a very important point in life, and it brings you inward, and then that comes outward in beauty. So it's that way of expressing. So those are basically the 3 areas within permaculture. And so now I think Yogaraj or Hanuman, you're
Tree
gonna.
care.
So they had spiritual Adam, Sarah said. They have 4 boxes within their garden team, I guess, or I don't know, their plant team. short cycle plants, long cycle plants, which are longer than 6 months. They're beautification plants, so plants that aren't necessarily producing food, but, make the environment look nicer. And then also trees for their own category, so fruit trees and otherwise. And this was an example of what they do with their soil. This video, I think, is pretty long, so I'm not going to go through that one, but it's in the folder if you want to watch it. I think they are going to provide a little bit more specifics about their soil creation. So I think I'll go to there real quick just to show that. And so they have a whole big, long, like probably bigger than Centro area that's dedicated to soil creation. They have a big wood chipper that they use to mulch up all of their branches and leaves really well. And they make big piles within this kind of like barn area. That pile behind them is the finished pile, and that pile's been sitting there for supposedly 4 to 6 months just resting. So they will start these piles, and that they said is one of the most important parts. Is it's after it's gone through the decomposition process, it no longer has the temperature to it that's killing the viable seeds and that you don't want in there. So it's down below 80 degrees, and then it's just resting, and that's when the microbes are doing all their work to break down all of the things and turn the nutrients into their available format for the plants. And then they have this cool little swing thing here, and they just can do this over top of the wheelbarrow, and it's a metal grate, and it will just pass through the dirt, and all of the big pieces that need to go back through again are separated out. Really simple to make. And then they have all of their bagged up soil that's ready to go back there in the back, stored in a place where it's not going to get wet. That's their little compost thermometer thingy. They also have a hydrometer, so it can test the soil content of it. I mean, the moisture content of it. This is their wood chipper. And this was the overall barn. So like they make one pile and then they will flip it over. And so they just kind of go one by one by one. So the next pile takes its place, and then the next pile, and the next pile, and the next pile. Pretty sure there were 7 of them in there. So
Can you pause right here for a little
yeah.
bit?
Mm-hmm.
So I've been talking to David, and we've been just brainstorming on how we can do this here. And this morning we took out the baldosas in between the different bays. And when we have this recipe, this final recipe of what they use, this is what I imagine us doing with the soil center. Except the piles they may be higher, but every pile will be like a separate bay.
Mm-hmm.
Like
And then when
that's
it's time to turn it over, you just go over the edge.
correct.
Mhm. Cool. And you've got a space for like the active compost, like food scraps and kitchen stuff.
That's a question that I don't have the answer to at the moment, but I can get back with you on that.
Just keep that in mind because we need a space where the dogs can't get to it.
Okay.
And that was their final temperature check on it to see. And look at that, man, that dirt was some black gold right there. Anything else you want to talk about in that box?
Are they putting their food scraps in that soil there? Or is that?
This was mainly, like, if you look at this one, it was mainly branches and sticks and yard waste and stuff like that. It didn't have a lot. I didn't see any kitchen stuff, but I also don't know what they do with their
You
kitchen
didn't see their
things.
active compost?
I did not. No, not that I remember.
Yeah, so yeah, that's a good point. Like having an area for the active composting, and then
This is the definitely slow compost here.
yeah, slow
So there's a
compost.
difference. So. Yeah. Mhm. All right. So This was a cool thing here. Is Tanya here? No. All right, so they also showed us their seed bank. This was, it says tomatoes, but they're just showing that they dry their own seeds and they will store them in little baggies labeled with what they are, what year it came from. This was just a beautiful picture of some beans that they had grown.
Do they
Just lovely.
dehydrate that, like the tomato seeds, or are they air drying them?
I'm certain they're just, yeah, just out in the air. I don't think they're putting them in a dehydrator.
I don't know if we have pictures of this, but they had this like a greenhouse structure where,
Yeah,
actually, I do have pictures of
I
that.
have pictures, it's
Okay,
coming.
cool.
Yeah.
And I think that'll answer your question. yeah.
So for beans, you just leave the beans on the plant long enough to let them dry. Um, That's the easiest way to do it. But they did have some in another space you'll see in a second. This was an example of how they store their seeds. They have a refrigerator there, and they're all labeled in alphabetical order so that they know what's in there, and then they have a list of what's in each bin. So again, they're separated by short cycle because short cycle means less than 6 months, and that they're going to be coming in there quite often because some of these plants, you saw on that list, there were 10 plants that they're seeding every single week. So those are easy to get to. Arugula, they're marked with whichever ones they're currently using. So that refrigerator back there is is their little seed bank. And I took a picture because this was a cool one that is, it's called twin cooling, which means that you can, the freezer doesn't have to be a freezer. It can be turned into a refrigerator as well. So both sections of that refrigerator were at refrigerator temperature. So that's why they chose that particular model, because they were able to do that and have more fridge space because you don't want to freeze the seeds. So these were all they did. I'm just saying that's what they had. This was all seeds, all beans, different kinds of beans that they had grown there. And so one of the things that they will do is they'll notice like when the seeds are getting old, they'll plant the seeds so that they go to more seed, so that they can replace what they have inside of the seed storage bank. So they'll plant a crop intentionally to make more seeds. This was the drying room that Dennis was talking about. So they have a space and you can see there are some beans. This was Neil's question, but he's not here. So they're drying corn, they're drying beans, and they have these different racks for plenty of airflow. But it is super hot in this room. It is definitely dry in there. They're drying their eggshells in there as well, different plants. This was a squash. They put their squash in there to cure. So cure just means it's a process where it dries a little bit, but the sugars turn into carbohydrates, so it's not quite so sweet. It kind of stops the maturing process, and it helps it stay fresh longer. So they'll dry their squash in there before they move them into their food storage, long-term food storage pantry. And those little things down there on the legs, that is an ant trap. So they've cut these bottles so that they can have water in them, but then also a layer of oil so that the ants can't climb up and get to their feast up there, all the different seeds that they're saving. So they were drying different kinds of plants. That was their rack outside of this area. This space inside of the drying room could really be multi-purpose and be, if it's near enough to the community center, could be for laundry drying as well. If you put strings running across from side to side, then that way it's not just for agricultural stuff, it's for hospitality stuff as well. And we won't have to use nearly as much propane because the sun will do it for us. So there's little bug traps and beautiful multicolored corn. And it was really just made with clear plastic, so not difficult to do and worked really, really well. And you'll just notice that the ceiling is so much lower in there because you're wanting to keep the heat down instead of in the other greenhouse where the ceiling was so high that it was letting the heat go up. This was an example of how they store their tools, which I really appreciated. Maybe I'll send a picture of this to Freddie, but they had painted the shape of the tool so that you can literally know where each tool goes. You know, every single one, that orange line behind it is showing where each tool, where its home is. So it's going back where it's supposed to at the end of the day. Communication boards, scales for weighing things. This was how they had their shovels stored, some of them hanging down. If they don't have handles, they've created a thing to hang them the other way. And then also back behind the ATV, there's machete storage. And I forget what the name of that kind of knife is, but with a slit down the middle so that you can put the blades through the board. And that's how machetes get stored, different pickaxes and stuff. And for me, I would love to see them labeled and maybe even a picture on there. But that's the machete storage. And this was their sticks, and then there's some more machete storage right there. They have a hanger for their ladder, and again, you can see there's a tiny little label right there, Escalera ladder, so that people know. It even says Escalera number 2, so you know which ladder is supposed to go there. Labels in English and Spanish, and so there's all their little tools and their fruit pickers and everything like that. Those are the things that they use to pull the grass near them when they're cutting. They will, I forget what they call them, but they do. Cole asked if they had a bunch of TECO employees, and they do have a bunch of TECO employees there. I forget, it's like, I want to say they said 500 acres. I mean, it's something really, really big. Most of it is forest, but a lot of it is landscaped area. I'm gonna ask again so we can have a better reference. Cole asked what the landscaped area versus the forest area is, and I don't have an answer to that, but this is also showing how to maximize your space and store stuff up in the rafters too. So you can, bigger pipes and longer tools and things like that can be up and out of the way. Storage of your little microorganism sprayer. Soul was making a new friend. Different storage. Yeah, when you're turning soil and stuff, those big ones, snow shovels are handy. There's their rakes, brooms. All their employees carry radios with them. And so this was just a breakdown of which channel is what for their radio communication. And then I liked this little cubby system that they had back there. They asked if they had employees, and yes, each one has a designated cubby back there for their personal stuff when they come in. And then here's their personal machetes. Everybody's got their name and their little name tag on their hook over there. So there's their machetes and their sheaths. We just talked about that today at our garden team meeting. I think that might be all for that. And the last thing was the chickens. We saw their chicken coop when we were there. They called this the anti-brooding area. A broody hen is one that's ready to be a mama. And so sometimes they will start to sit on their eggs in their nests. And this was a space that was designed to snap them out of that. Basically, if they have cool air coming up underneath them, apparently that works to stop that. So they had made a little crate to keep them out there and stop that. I really liked how they had natural wood and stuff like that in there for them to climb on and play on and sleep on. So they had kind of like and it looks cooler too. So that was what they had for their chickens in there for roosting at night. And they hang up their food, keep it elevated. And they were using sawdust on the floor in there, and they said that gets changed out about every 2 weeks. This was a 5-gallon watering bucket that they had set up with our little, we have some of these automatic waterers, but it was really simple to just drill a hole in the 5-gallon bucket. And I liked that idea as well. Banana vinegar water for the chickens. Maybe. I don't know anything about that, but yeah. Can you put it on the mic so they can hear?
I was just thinking it'd be easy to mix in, like if we were doing banana vinegar water, apparently that's like really good. Doing like a splash of that in their water. Banana vinegar is really beneficial for their health, apparently.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just inspiration from that is also adding a little bit of liquid microorganisms. Like if we do calcium tea bag,
Yeah.
then they're not just pecking the calcium, they're actually drinking it.
Yeah, I really want them to be drinking it too. So this was another watering system that they had, which I thought was really cool. And then down there at the very bottom, they have, it's kind of like a little hamster would have the little nipples where they can come up and they just kind of tilt their head up and it taps it open and they can drink from it that way. So it's less chance for spillage than that other kind, that orange kind that was the automatic waters, and it's less chance for it to get dirty too. This little area was for their chicks. So when they use an incubator to hatch their eggs, and they have a rooster that's out with all of their chickens. But they will use this area to segregate the little babies for a while until they're ready to go out with the bigger ones. This is their nesting boxes, and they close them at night. So this black flap comes down over it at night so that they can't get in there and they're not sleeping in the nesting boxes. That helps keep it from getting poop on your eggs.
Yeah, and something else I'm noticing is the flap on the front that's blocking them from pushing out all the hay.
Yes.
Like I feel like there's, I think I saw it over here with the new construction ones. It looks like it's like similar to this in that way, but the ones in Mama Carol's tend to, there's no hay in there because they just kick it out. So
Yeah.
maybe that's something we can do soon, is just put a board up in the
Mhm.
front just so they don't kick it out.
Yep. That was their cool chicken eggs that they have. They have some that are like light blue in color, which was really cool. That was the picture of the sawdust, and this was him just explaining what I explained about the broody hen. And this was giving a little tour of the chicken coop. We can just walk through it real quick.
We're going on a tour of the chicken house for Tanya. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of really nice.
Oh, look at those rainbow colored eggs. Here are their little boxes. Mm-hmm. Do you put these down at some point? I see that there's things up here to cover them with.
Say it again.
Do you have things to cover them? What do you
It's-
use those
it's
for?
Because otherwise the little hens will go in there and they'll sleep in the nest and they'll poo in the nest.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's just a way of trying.
So
to
you
keep-
cover them at night?
Yeah, we close it in the afternoon.
Mhm. No sleeping in the nest.
That's the deal.
That is a
That's the deal.
rooster.
And what is this little segregated area for?
This is where, so those little.
They're little babies.
They kind of start off in here.
Mhm.
Then as they get big enough, they open the door and integrate them slowly. to the
Okay.
rest of the flock.
That's for the baby chickens with their
Like,
little roosts and little
It's
water.
like a halfway house.
They're flapping their wings. This is their roosting pen. Mhm.
You can see there's all different varieties here.
Yep.
There's curly feathered ones. There's
Mhm.
kind of look more like bristles than.
Wow, that is a cool looking chicken.
Soul's doing a good job crowing like a rooster. And this was just showing their waterers. And I think that's all. So I think we saw all of the different Can't see, what is this one under here? Yep, we saw all of the different boxes, so I'm gonna stop the share and ask if there's any questions or inspirations that's hitting right now. Soul is being a little rooster back there. Or anything else you guys want to share that you were inspired by when you were there that you want to get on record?
Is like we can implement here is like what I was talking about with the board and putting a board up for the chicken coops. And then maybe even installing well, I don't really know. They don't lay eggs overnight?
Not usually.
Not
They're
usually.
sleeping, they're usually roosting, and so they wouldn't.
So
The
that
only,
wouldn't
the
really
only way
affect,
they would do that is if they were in a nest box.
they were what?
In a nest box,
Yeah,
which they shouldn't be at nighttime.
right. So I'm wondering if that would affect egg production if they're not in the nesting boxes overnight.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Only one way to find out.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe we could try that out. It'd be more commitment for somebody to do that every night and every morning.
I really think that they haven't been in the nest boxes too much. Tanya goes in there and counts them at night, and she sees most of them on the rungs,
Cool.
on the roost. So I think they're not.
Yeah,
in
I
there
think
anymore.
they're like kind of getting used to like, yeah, roosting on the bar. So yeah, I think the boards would be good, and then also like at the soil center have like where the shovels and stuff are have like a place to put the machetes.
Yeah, Dennis and I had talked about that. Might get
Yeah.
it rearranged during the remodel, but I think
Yeah,
there will be
during like
one.
right now would probably be a good time to do it if like figure out where the space is and all that.
I think I'm gonna pause this. You guys good? Anybody want to share anything else? All right, I'm gonna stop the recording.